Okay, welcome to the 4 o'clock work session for July 2nd, 2013 for the Bowling Green Board of Commissioners. The first item that we're going to talk about today in the work session and discussions phase is the possibility of the Briarwood Elementary School Connector Project in an agreement with Warren County Public Schools to try to assist in a problem area off of Ironwood Drive where residents of that neighborhood in Briarwood stack up to pick up their children from school. We've looked at and talked with over the years with the school board about redirecting that stacking traffic over into the Lovers Lane Soccer Complex parking lot. Would like for Melissa Kanzler, city engineer, to help us guide us through this discussion. So Ms. Kanzler, if you'd help us out, please.
Thank you. As the mayor said, we have discussed this issue over the past few years. I think I found some exhibits from '03 where we first started talking about this. We revisited it in '06 with some more hard numbers on cost. Since that time, the alignment has changed a bit because the school board has built various things in the back. So I think what we have here, the concept that I'm showing you now, is probably the most direct route to solve the problem. And again, currently, as we know, and we have, is it on here? Oh, no, here, this is. Stacking, I know Gene can attest to this. It goes down Ironwood, also down Steeplechase. What we are proposing and what we've looked at here, since the state has installed this new traffic signal at the soccer complex, we are proposing to connect our parking lot with the soccer complex to the existing loop that is actually hidden underneath here. So you can come in this way, circle, drop off the children like you do now, and come back out this way, or exit out Ironwood. With this proposal, we are not looking at an entryway into Ironwood, therefore eliminating that stacking problem. We do have a little bit more detail. Obviously, we have a plan sheet that is out to, is that not going to work? Bid at this time for this project. This is a little bit more detailed and shows a more smooth curve where they can make that turn a little bit better and get back out that way if they desire. Bids are out on this. They're due back on the 10th. And if so desired, we will look at awarding that at the next meeting. Currently, our estimate was approximately, for the total project, was about $60,000, and that was considering the pavement, some additional curbing, and some sidewalk in that area, so we could account for the traffic flow of the kids coming from the neighborhood. Of course, I know as we have discussed and discussed with Gene, here's the property line between the city's property and the schools, and we would, of course, agree to split that cost appropriately based on what part of the project lands on our property and what part lands on theirs. Some of the issues that we point out on the plans, there is a playground right here, and we pointed that out in some of the literature Gene has developed, would have to be relocated. And then there's a fence that runs along their back property that would just have to move up in front of the road. And I believe we stated, that would be the school's responsibility to move that, and then we would contract the road if agreed to and oversee that construction. So at this time, we feel like this is the best alternative. I don't know if you can see, there's a baseball field there. That's the playground here. And so we're just scooting that back property line and continuing around that loop as they do today. That would allow for the queue, if need be, to come out into this parking lot. I think we're losing power. And if it had to, it could serpentine through the aisles of the parking lot there. And we discussed activity at the soccer complex and the parking, and it gets kind of busy there. But typically, at the time school lets out, that isn't the time that's the peak rush for the soccer complex. So we don't think that'll be a problem when school kids are being dropped off and picked up.
Is the plan to block the incoming traffic off Ironwood?
That was the plan. We don't show a detail. Let me see. We don't have the signing and striping shown on here, but what would happen was they would come in here only, and they could exit that way. But if we choke that down to where it's just wide enough for one car, I think that solves the problem with the stacking. You know, parents could still have the option to be back there and let their kids walk to them. They just couldn't drive up through the loop. There's existing sidewalk on each side here, and we're trying to cross them here to get them on the school side with this project. We would remove the old loop. You can kind of see the old loop right there. Remove that pavement. And again, there's the fence that exists, would need to be relocated. I would assume they'd want that here around their playground area. But again, we've talked about this, I know, with Superintendent Brown when he was here. We showed a different alignment at that time. And this is what we have to work with now because they've added parking and we have a swimming pool back there now. But it works. It does has the same effect as the ones we looked at before.
Have we had any recent conversations?
Yes, with school board members and current staff at the Warren County Public Schools. And they're excited about trying to help alleviate the issues in the Briarwood neighborhood. It was difficult to try to resolve the problem when people would have to exit out onto Lover's Lane without being any traffic control device at that soccer complex, and that was one of the comments we made to the state, that in anticipation of school traffic coming that direction, that it would be best to have a light because it didn't quite meet the warrants yet, but this will put it over that threshold to meet those warrants.
What will happen if the soccer field parking lot is full for whatever reason, a special tournament or something, as far as ingress and egress?
I don't know. Brent could probably talk to that more. I don't foresee there being a large event during school time.
It's not something that the soccer season won't have any tournament during school time. The short kids will still be in school, so we can soccer.
Brent, why don't you come on up to the microphone?
It's Brent Belcher, Parks Director.
Yeah, the time of use for the soccer fields would be when school's out. So the use of the soccer fields maybe when school kids are being picked up and such would be no conflict for times.
So you wouldn't have a tournament or something going on with out-of-town people in, or?
I can't imagine any time when school's in session they would have any tournament that would have out-of-town children playing. Don't think we have any instance where that'd be possible.
Ms. Hill?
Melissa, would you explain the cost structure, please? Who's covering the cost and what?
I believe the breakdown was primarily, obviously, most of it's on the cities or the school's property. They would be responsible for that construction cost. We would oversee the project, bidding it out. Kyle Hunt here has been the one to do the design in-house, so we don't have those costs to incur. It would be staff time. We would be responsible for the actual construction of the piece from the parking lot to the property line. So that would be very minimal.
So that small piece was $60,000, or
No,
all of
the
it
entire,
$60,000?
and that's from our quantities from design. It's a good estimate. We'll see what the bids come in at on the 10th.
The city would provide the engineering services, the construction oversight, but the actual construction costs, probably about 15 of that 60.
Right.
I think we had talked about.
Right, and we did look at some alternatives, but this was the most affordable fix for solving this problem that the neighborhood is seeing and continues to see. I think it grows every year. It seems like more and more cars are sitting out there than was when they first started. But again, like the mayor said, we could queue up, need be. Right now, the queue of the cars, I believe, is as far-reaching as Briar Circle, which is a good 3 blocks down. So if you take that queue and put it here, you could wrap it into the parking lot if need be. And I know that'll be something new. If this does go through, it'll be something new for the parents. And I know I provided this exhibit to Jean to provide to the school board if they did need to get something out to the parents if this does go, so that they have a heads up on how this will work.
Take some education.
Yeah, that's one of the purposes of this particular work session, to make sure that parents knew what was coming.
Right. So it's my understanding, that the board and the Warren County Schools is aware and desires it. I guess the next step is to find their support of the project.
Their formal
I sent a
approval.
copy of the agreement to the Warren County School Board Attorney about a week ago, 7, 8 days ago, and they've got it. And my understanding is I think they're scheduled to meet again the 7th or the 8th. I've got the exact date. But they meet about the same time our bids come in.
Yes, sir.
Is there no parking by the entrance and on Ironwood now? Because I could see possibly
here.
people stacking on both sides of the street and,
There is parking allowed for the most part, and I don't see that being completely eliminated for those parents that are comfortable letting their kids walk from, here down the sidewalk to them. I don't see how we could eliminate that.
if you had no parking, you could.
No parking would solve that.
It does require the parents who are dropping their kids off from the Briarwood School District to come and make 2 right turns to get onto Lover's Lane to enter the soccer park,
Right.
whereas right now they're used to just stacking up on Ironwood Drive.
Right.
But there are 2 right turns, and then if they choose to come back out that way, there is a traffic light for them.
Right, and-
But they will be able to exit out Ironwood.
Yes.
I guess they could still stop on Steeplechase and let their kids out, although I'm not sure how many people would do that, especially for the young ones. Most of them are not going to do
Well,
that.
the drop-off isn't quite the issue. It's the
Yeah.
pickup in the afternoon when school closes at 3, and they're lined up starting at 1:30 or so.
Well, I guess Melissa mentioned, I guess they still could, but I'm not sure how many people would,
Yeah.
especially for
Yeah,
5,
but
6,
you don't
7
queue
year
up
olds.
to drop off. You queue up to pick up. That's the issue.
Now, I will say that I know the school would desire to have this in place. I believe the first day is August 8th. We put that in the bid, assuming it gets approved by the Board of Education and awarded on the 16th. We put in the bid they have to have it done in 3 weeks.
Wow.
Now, whether that's doable, we haven't heard a word from any of the contractors who have seen that, if they've even looked at. I do feel that might push, I wouldn't be surprised if the cost went up a little because of that time frame. We don't know. We haven't heard a word from anybody yet. So.
Any other comments or questions? All right, thank you so much for the presentation.
You're welcome. Thank you.
All right, we'll go next into the discuss the amendments to the agreements related to the garage wrap currently under construction in Block 6 of the Tax Increment Financing District. Mr. Gorman, would you like to begin the presentation today, or is Mr. Brooks? Mr. Brooks, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mayor, Commissioners. Not sure what is expected of us, so I'll sort of maybe kind of give you a brief overview, and then we'll answer questions to the extent we can. With me here today is Chris Mills, who's president of HitSense. You all are familiar with Chris and his company. And again, we, in various settings, we have spent an awful lot of time talking about this, so I don't want to bore you with facts that you already have. Basically, I would just sum it up by saying it this way. The WRAP building, which is, as you all know, well underway, was an agreement entered into with the Mills Company based on just construction estimates. And it turns out that those estimates are inaccurate. And I don't know that I want to, it would be a little bit speculative to say why, but I will say that when those estimates were derived, we were in the sort of depths of problems which made building costs just be sometimes spectacularly low. When the building was actually let, it was a little bit different times. So the good thing for the contractor, but not necessarily for the purchaser of the services. So we find ourselves needing to talk about financing a little bit more through our bonded indebtedness. You already know the position that the city is in as a sort of a backstop to that bonded indebtedness, sort of the third line of who would pay for that stuff. And we've searched for a variety of ways to address this that would accomplish what we need to accomplish to get the building finished and minimize the exposure to the city. The ideas that we are before you here on today really I can't even tell you who first suggested it, but it came out of a meeting with some of us and some of your city staff as we were kicking around several ideas, including things like reducing the debt reserve, things like that, which I believe that your staff felt like actually would unduly increase the city's exposure, and we moved away from that and lighted on this. So what this does is it allows for an increase in the bonded indebtedness. Really two really simple things is all you're doing. Allows for an increase of the bonded indebtedness and allows for mills to use up to 5% of rents for, I think it's called operations and management. Really, the issue that they were seeing was what happens when this is a long-term deal, what happens when a tenant moves out and we got a great new prospective tenant who wants to come in, but somebody needs to spend, a couple $100,000 fixing the space up, and all of the rents are going somewhere else. So the way this is designed is to allow them to have a way to do that, not to have a way to put any money in their pocket. Their deal is at the end of this, when it's all over, they hopefully won't have to write the city a check, but they would write the city a check if the city had been called upon to make any of these payments. That 5% thing is really, to me, is really key to what we're doing here. And I believe you all understand it, but just to make the point, actually, in a strange sort of way, just in terms of economics, the prospective owner Mills sort of had a disincentive to relet property because it was going to cost money to do it. Now, they had an incentive in the sense that if there was not enough rent, and then if the city had to honor some of that, and then they're going to have to pay it at the end, but they could certainly put the payday off for a couple of decades, which was not really good for them as a tenant in that building, or really for any of us. We want to get the space rented. So that's what that 5% we think really helps us do. So I'll stop, and Chris or I will do our best to answer your questions.
If we can summarize what these documents presented to us today for consideration tonight, what they will do is extend the city as the third payer obligation to, well, maybe I'll let Jeff explain that so that you were intimately involved in
It
these
might be
details.
appropriate for Gene, since he wrote the document,
Sure.
then Jeff can give the fiscal analysis. Is that all right?
Yes, sir. That'd be great.
Okay.
I'm not sure we care which goes first, but I would be glad to answer questions too. It's basically 4 documents we're giving you. Need to realize a couple of them we gave you just for informational purposes. There's a couple of these documents the city does not sign. We're not a party to. A couple of them we are a party to. So if you remember, when initially came in, they did a subdeveloper agreement with us for that block, in which they stated they will get $22 million in investment. Obviously, we need to change that. In any reference to any of the documents where we reference $22 million, we're going back in and changing that to $27 million. As Kevin said, probably something should have been picked up from the beginning. Currently, 100% of the rent revenues that they collect in that RAP are pledged to debt payment. I think there's some language in it that said, well, if they needed more money, they could always charge more than the minimum amount they require by agreement to charge. I think there's some concern. One, where they'd be able to do that, if they'd be able to get extra, higher rent from some people, or two, if they could, where that'd be sufficient enough to help them pay some of their costs they may incur. I think Kevin's example is probably the classic. If somebody comes in and rents for 5 years or 10 years, what happens if, say 5 years from now they get a tenant, and that one leaves, and we've got 8,000 square feet vacant, but somebody else comes in and looks at that and says, yeah, I'd love to move into it, but you've got to make renovations like most landlords do to bring tenants in, and it's going to cost maybe not $200,000, but even $50,000, $40,000 to renovate it. Right now they have no rental income coming in for them to keep back to do that. The idea, well, you can always charge more rent to help make up your cost to do that. Well, maybe they can, maybe they can't, but I think everybody kind of thought to me that was a fair thing to do. was to give them at least access to some of that rent money to help them cover cost, because they're not making income off this. All that's pledged. So that those changes are being made in a couple of documents. The major documents for us, again, are the subdeveloper agreement and there's also a lease agreement, a sublease agreement between us and the mills. And that's being changed as well to reflect both of those changes. A couple of other documents the county is going to have to change. Jeff will go into it too. If everybody will summarize, I guess, quickly what's pledged to this. The debt payment first is all rental income. That's the first pledge to debt payment, followed by TIF revenue from blocks 4A, 5, 8, and 10. And then the HIT cents also in block 6 is pledged to this payment. If that's insufficient, then there's that $1.5 billion debt reserve fund that Kevin mentioned is pledged. We did not want to hit that. We thought we needed to keep that in place. And then the last thing is the city backstop. If all those funds are insufficient to make debt payment, then the city general fund will come in and pay any shortfall. Those are not being changed in these agreements. Those stay exactly the same. None of that's being proposed to be changed at all. Trying to think what else. Again, like Kevin said, there's two major issues, two major things have been changed. Again, the 22 to 27, and then 100% of rent pledged to debt to 95% being pledged. And I'll defer to Jeff as well.
We, as Kevin mentioned, we had several meetings on this, and I can't remember when the first request was made to use the reserve, but that was probably back early this year, late last year. We weren't crazy about that idea, as you know, and so several months later, another idea came along that we looked at, and that was the idea of possibly giving access to the TIF revenues, or what we would call excess TIF revenues, for several years, actually through 2020. And the way that would have worked is, or not worked in my mind, is that each year when the TIF monies would come in from the state, any extra TIF monies that were not needed after the lease revenue money was used first, as Gene mentioned, then the TIF monies would be used second towards debt. If there had been any of those left, well, originally the city was promised that we would get any leftover TIF money. So we thought that's kind of tapping into our revenue source, the potential that's out there. So we didn't like that idea because I didn't think it would work either, because I didn't know you could ever accumulate enough TIF revenue to finish out what they needed to finish out. It would have taken a long time. It had been a little piece at a time every year, a little extra money. You might build another section of a floor or something, but it was going to take forever. There wasn't any guarantee you'd ever accumulate enough money. So we came up with this other idea of just getting an extra money on the front end to get the thing built. The critical thing, I think, is these first two revenue sources. The lease revenues is the most critical in my mind, is because that's where most of the money is to come from. And if you don't have a building that's built and ready to lease out, you're not going to have lease revenues to come in. So we wanted to do everything we could to strengthen that revenue source, because it's number one. And then after that is the TIF revenues from blocks 4, 5, 8, and 10. So on paper, we are going from a commitment that you all made of $22 million, which is really $20.5 in real construction money. The $1.5 is built into that, the $1.5 million. So we're going from a $20.5 million to really a $25.5 million issue, with the $1.5 million reserve built in or added on to make it 27. So on paper, we have in our audited financial statements a note disclosure that explains all this, that explains the city's commitment. This would change the amount from the 20, it says 20.5 now, it would go to 25.5. I've been asked, well, what does this do to the city's credit rating? This note disclosure, we found out, really didn't do much to our credit rating. It's there, it's out there as a contingent liability. I think it all stems on we get 2 or 3 years down the road and something happens and the city is making these parking lease payments, on a routine basis. That's when they might look at us and say, yeah, there's a liability, a real liability out there that could negatively affect the city's fund balance, the city's financial health. So, but at this point, I think it's all in a note disclosure, basically on our side in our audit. We felt like we're already committed to the 22. We're already committed to making that wrap a success. I think we all want to see it succeed. If we do nothing, we don't see where doing nothing reduces our risk of exposure. That's kind of the way I'm looking at it. So we felt like this gives it a better shot of producing the least revenues that we were anticipating it would produce. Protects our interest in that we feel like it reduces the chances of us paying sooner on our parking lease by getting it built, getting it leased out, and we felt like this was the best of, I guess it was 3 options we kind of looked at over the last 6 to 9 months. That's kind of where we stood.
What would our payment, the city's payment, be on $27 million industrial bond?
The full payment, interesting you asked me that, Joe. I thought I better come up with that. So at 4%, and 4% would probably be a high rate. $27 million bond at 25 years is about $1.7 million a year. At 3% for 25 years, it's about $1.5 million a year. Now, just the first floor of that wrap is 38,000 square feet, right, Kevin? At $15 a square foot is $570,000 in revenues. So, if you look at let's say you have 100,000, let's make it simple, 100,000 square feet to lease out. At $15 a square foot, that's $1.5 million in lease revenues. You get it leased at 80% occupancy, you're looking at $1.2 million a year in revenues. You take that $1.2 million in lease revenues, I've been told we're anticipating roughly $300,000 a year in TIF revenue from blocks 4, 5, 8, and 10. That gets you to about a $1.5 million in revenue to offset your roughly $1.5 million in debt service. In simple numbers. Kevin, you can jump in on that, but that's...
Well, we certainly hope to beat that interest rate a little bit, but...
Yeah, it might be less than 3.
Yeah.
So that would be conservative, I would think, right now for a IRB issue.
All right, do you have anything else to add, Mr. Brooks, before we open up for questions here? All right, questions or comments? Go ahead.
Just based on those numbers you said, Jeff, so if we don't do this, therefore our lease revenues will be less, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
They'd only be leasing out what you could get completed at this point, which I don't know how many square foot that would be, but I would say we're in the 60,000 range, maybe.
Yeah, and it was going to make it particularly hard. The area that's likely to not be able to be finished well would be the ground floor, which generates all the, generates sales tax and all that stuff. So, yeah.
I guess, Kevin, my first question to you is the 500,000, and then the document it refers to making changes. On the first floor, what's intended to be done on the first floor? Build out the restaurant space?
Retail restaurant, yes.
Retail. How much of that $5 million do you think is going to be earmarked for that? And I think you're right in trying to go back and say what you're going to do with the whole $5 million with cost overruns. I understand that. But how much is going to be used on restaurants?
I may defer to Chris here in a minute, but I don't know that we can answer it that way for this reason. it could be that a substantial portion of that would be used for the restaurants, but that's just because that's the last thing being built. In other words, it's not that all of the cost overruns were in the restaurant area. They've got obviously 2 tenants, they've got to finish those. They're talking to other tenants now, they've got to finish those. So they're almost coming this way. So a substantial portion of it would be Commissioner Waltrip, but it's not just for that reason. It's expensive space, but it's also the last space. So it's kind of where you run out of money.
So, and I've only heard this, and so I've not heard it from anyone connected with you guys. But the restaurant space, there was an effort made to try to get private restaurants to come in. Is that true?
An effort to get national brands, maybe. Yeah, I'm gonna let Chris. I'm not been involved in the renting recruiting.
Yeah, well, I guess thanks for the opportunity to kind of come up here and talk a little bit today. I know Mr. Brooks is trying to, be as honest as he can, and I guess just to take your question again, when this project was handed to us, when we got involved, it was already priced. The architect drawings were already well on their way. And one of the things that's made this really complicated is the fact that they built the parking structure first and then added the wrap around it. And so we've run into a lot of issues with that. One of the big ones has been like ADA compliance getting between the wrap on each floor and then getting from the garage into the wrap. So there's been a lot of issues with that. The other one is actually...
Was that the elevator issue? Is that what you're talking about? Or is that part of it?
The problem is the floor, the elevator issue is a different issue. Oh. This is where the floor leveling has not matched up perfectly. So if you're in a wheelchair, you can't just get from the parking structure to the wrap. And so there's had to be a lot of different things that have changed from that. And that's really just with the way this was built, one, and then the other one was built afterwards, really made that problem a major issue. The other issue we're having is the roof of some of the building is actually a parking structure. And so nobody quoted out when cars drive over the roof, it moves 2 inches. And so the ceilings inside of everybody's space or throughout the building are going to be shaking every time somebody drives over. So that was a substantial engineer, had to hire engineers to get in there and figure out, okay, well, how do you fix this problem? And then the products that we had to buy were very, very expensive.
That's the old parking structure at Western. That's what happens to all their offices.
Yeah, okay. And really, when this project was handed to us, a lot of these details were, they were worked out. It was handed us to this is a done deal. It's a $22 million building. Here's the building. Here's what you're going to do. And really, as we've been very deeply involved in the construction process and working with Alliance, it just seems a lot of things have just been oversight. And so to Mr. Brooks's point, a lot of the money has just been moved to the front to pay for the shell, and it's just getting taken off the end. And one of our big things with this, we've added 20 jobs in the last year. We're growing very rapidly, and so we're really trying to attract young, high-tech jobs. And the problem we keep having is losing qualified employees to Nashville. We've talked about this before. And we really want to create a destination for our employees. We want it that when people are done, when they're done with work, that there's a place to hang out, place to go. We really want apartments down there. We want people to be able to live in apartments and come to work and go to Fountain Square and go to SkyPack and hopefully go to a grocery store. And we really want to make downtown Bowling Green a destination. And to us, the first floor of this is really an entertainment district. And we're working with SkyPack, and we're working with a lot of different people to really try to make 365 days a year something fun going on for the young community. And so that's really what we've been focusing on is employee retention. A lot of people ask me, why are you involved with this? What are you doing? And really, it's just we are dedicated to Bowling Green. We've signed a 25-year deal with Bowling Green that we're going to be here. We're very excited about our new space. We're moving in this month, which is a good milestone for us, and just using this as part of the greater picture of the downtown area is what we're trying to accomplish.
All that's admirable, and if anybody can pull it off, I think probably you guys can. And I hope that happens. A concern that I have, and whenever somebody sits up here and says that other people have talked to you, you never know whether one person talked to us or a whole flock of people. But there have been probably half a dozen people talk to me about this. And some of those concerns are the same concerns that I have. One of them being that the city, without the city's backing on this, and tell me if I'm wrong, this is part comment. Without the city's backing on this, this extra $5 million, the restaurants won't be built out. Is that a...
That is correct, absolutely.
And therein lies the rub, to a certain extent, is the business owners that are existing restaurant people downtown see this, and I have to say that I share this view at this time, is that we're helping to bring in competition for our existing businesses. Called one restaurant owner Thursday, just discussed it, and again, he was not pleased that the government was going to be involved in helping a private industry bring in additional competition for him downtown. I'll have to say, let me back up here just a second. The lease and going to 95% and all that seems to make sense to me. In the overall scheme of things with all these things, that seems to make the most sense to me. And I don't have a problem, and I'm not sure of the 3 or 4 people out of that 6 people talked to me, they felt the same thing, really didn't have a problem with that. The problem is, in my estimation, again, is that we as a city entity are helping to bring in competition for our existing businesses, restaurants particularly. Now, the argument could be made, I guess, is that we've done that for rental property too.
Well, I guess the argument I would make is that what we are trying, I mean, the whole point of the TIF district is to, revive it and bring life to it. And so we don't look at it as competition. We look at creating this destination and providing more people to come down here. We want people from Russellville and Franklin and all the surrounding counties to come to this place. And so if you talk to many restaurant owners, a lot of time what you'll find is when a new restaurant comes in next door that's maybe not directly exactly the same thing, it will increase the other restaurant's business because it will drive more people downtown. If people are coming downtown and they go by another restaurant, then they'll have the ability to, go in there and do that. So I don't look at it as, I definitely understand your point and I understand their concern, but our variety of restaurants will be very different than anything that's out there. And so it's not like getting a hamburger from one place or getting a hamburger from another.
And I think therein, again, is the issue of if this was done with private money and not government backing, I think that's fantastic. And I think that the people that I've talked with or that have talked with me would agree with that would be perfect. And that's the way competition works. But I think the issue, again, has to do with the government involved at this point in helping that, in making that happen. Because again, if we don't do this, which I'm sitting here now and I'll just be very candid with you, obviously I believe this is going to pass. And I want this project to succeed as much as anybody sitting up here or out there. But there are also still some concerns on the part of some of our current business community that again, government is backing a project that can't get private financing. And if a restaurant, I don't know how this sounds, the way it's going to come out, so I'll just say it. If indeed you all have looked at some private restaurants to come in down there, and they won't do that, or you can't make that happen, I guess the question would be, if they don't think it could happen, how do you all think it can happen and be successful?
Yeah. I think it's very simple. All the restaurants that we talk to, they have no commitment to Bowling Green. They have every city in the world they can go to at any time to open up their restaurant in the middle of another busy intersection. They do a demographic search on that area. They look at what's the medium income within a 1 mile radius, and they say, no, thank you. And they're not, I could say, I will pay you $2 million to do this. And they'll say no, because their key to success is to not close a restaurant. We have an actual commitment to Bowling Green. And so we're passionate about this, and we're passionate about what we're doing. And so that's why we think it can succeed, because it is part of a destination. It's not just one restaurant. It's not one place going on in the middle of a building. It's an entire group of different activities that's going to drive people from around the community into our place.
Is that the concept? And again, I've not heard that from any of you all. But is that the concept where you have the one kitchen and several restaurants? Is that something?
There's a commissary area where there is a major piece of the kitchen area is shared amongst the restaurant. So all the prep work and everything can be done in one place. So you get the economies of scale, plus you get the access to one delivery service for all of the different places.
So I'll ask you the similar question that I asked Kevin is, do you know how much of the $5 million would be spent toward building out the restaurant portion?
I'm going to have to give the same answer Kevin did, and that is that because we have overspent so much on the front end, the majority of the money will be used for the development of the first floor, but that's simply just because it's the last thing that we're doing, and the rest of the stuff is already being built, it's already underway.
Okay. I have an email I'm going to read. All of us received it, but I think it's pertinent and it kind of sums up most of what I think, but in a better way than I could ramble through it. So if you'll bear with me just a second. It says, I read the article on the wrap in the paper tonight. I will not be able to attend the session, but continue to be disappointed with our continued use of aggressive debt downtown. Our economy is in very good shape today, and banks are more than willing to lend if the borrower and project are sound. The only reason I assume they are looking for the city to be the bank is that they don't want to be on the hook, or the deal doesn't make good business sense. It seems like we have lots of loose structures with unknown liabilities. Already paying for a ballpark that was supposed to be to fund itself. Sky Pack is still new. Will it need help with debt service outside the hotel pledge portion of the debt? I'm almost finished. If we have hit the magic number for matching state TIF funds, then let's make all the other funding in the future stand on its own. If not, then give every real estate owner funds to fix up their buildings downtown to compete against the rat and attract renters for their vacant spaces. Lots of empty office spaces downtown for rent. Is the city going in business against the real estate owners that are already downtown? You have done a lot to change downtown and pave the foundation. It's time for the city to step back and let capitalism take over if a profit can be made. And this was an email that I think it was sent to all of us.
Yes, my immediate response to that is that we are on the hook for this money. Based on the documents, that any money that the city pays out, we have to pay back. So I don't look at that as that you guys are fronting this money. We are watching the money as we consider this our money. We are spending it as we would spend it. We have sent in 1 million hours of meetings with contractors arguing about price and trying to save $100 here and there, because we know ultimately that's going to be, we're going to have to pay that back.
Well, from your all's reputation, as I said before, it seems like if anybody can do this, and again with the people involved in it, it seems like that you all could. Let me ask a question, Jeff. Let's say that we have to pay X amount of dollars toward this, and at the end, whenever we're paid back, is there interest on that money?
No.
I don't recall there being any language about the interest, so that's something we might need to look at. Gene, do you remember anything?
Why wouldn't there be interest?
I'm sorry?
Why would?
That's a
terrible question. Well, the terrible question is why.
Yeah, that's a good question. I guess it just got overlooked in the drafting of the documents. I'm not sure, but what the intent was.
Is that anything that you all talked about, or is that?
No, it hasn't come up.
It would seem to me that would be something that would need to change if we pay debt and we're going to get repaid, then obviously that seems like that should be some money that the city should be drawing interest on. But I had not seen it in any document, is what my thought was. So
I don't think it's there.
It would be in the parking lease document, though.
The operating agreement, maybe.
And Jeff, in talking about the city's liability on this, and I'm the one that wears him out about that question, as far as bonds, and there is liability. He's made me feel better, somewhat better, obviously, with what we've talked about one-on-one, and then what he said tonight has made me feel a little bit more comfortable about that issue. But I still would be remiss to say that there is liability on our part by doing this. And we can't dismiss that and say, oh, it won't happen, because we don't know what will happen. But I guess I also had a gentleman call me, and we had a discussion on venture capitalism and how we're involved in a very risky project. And some of what he said I couldn't refute. Some of it we had a good discussion about it. But again, I just have a real problem with us helping a private entity compete with our local people, I guess is my major issue that I have. The other part with the 95%, again, I think that seems fine. But again, I'm being realistic about it. I do believe this is going to pass. I wish you all the best of luck. I know when you got into it, you probably didn't sign up for as many headaches as you have. But those would be my concerns.
Ms. Hill?
I kind of need to be refreshed on some things since I haven't been here that long, but it seems when I first heard about this garage and then the wrap, that the intention was always to put a wrap around it. Is that correct?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So.
But our wrap started on the other side of the building.
Okay. So if you had started on the other side, would that have eliminated problems?
I do not know the answer to that question.
Well, to me, listening to what you said in the beginning, I don't believe you would be here tonight asking for more money if the garage had been built properly to accommodate the wrap. Is that true?
I can't say with absolute certainty, but there would definitely be a significant cost savings of some of the structural issues that we've run into. I'm not sure what made it move to the other side. That was before our involvement, and I'm not sure if there would be the ceiling issue on the other side. I think the problem was the depth of the other side was so narrow that it wasn't enough space to possibly get the square footage that we needed out of the office space.
So have you all tried to recoup some of that money on your expenses you've had to do since it wasn't built to accommodate the wrap?
No, and I'm not sure who we'd recoup that from.
Okay. That concerns me.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't believe that's your fault.
Yeah.
Thank you for getting it where it meets ADA standards and all that. To follow up with what Commissioner Waltrip said, I will have to say, and you're not going to like what I say, but I do like the thought of them paying interest. If we make any payments, to me, that could help the citizen say, we're not really backing your project. Yes, we're helping now, but then you turn around at the end of this and pay whatever the city has paid, possibly plus interest. I agree with Commissioner Waltrip. I do have a hard time with the city backing another business to compete with our businesses anywhere in Bowling Green. But I'll also have to say, after all the proposals that Jeff's met with and we've heard about, I do believe this is the best proposal for the city of Bowling Green. And I'm of the belief that we're at the point we're better off to back this and see it succeed than to not approve this. So I will be supporting this. I wish I didn't have to, but I also want you all to be successful because I believe it will make our whole downtown as well as our city more successful. I do appreciate what you all are doing. The hours, Doug Gorman and his committee, laughed. I don't know, to be a volunteer and to do all that they have done, hats off to you. I know you get lots of grief, but thank you. Thank you all. I'm sorry that garage was not built the way where you wouldn't have to be here, but good luck.
Thank you.
Any comments or questions? Almost didn't had to step out. Yes, sir.
I just have one question. Given all the problems you've had with the various floors other than the ground floor, the restaurants will go, what's surety if we increase the bond to $5 more million that'll get done?
I mean, the pricing, we've reviewed the pricing and everything. I mean, I'm not the only one making that decision, but me, Clinton, and Ed all are on the same page that we're going to move forward with this if we get the approval today.
Risk of being short, that means yes, you'll finish the restaurant if we increase the
Yes.
$5 million?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Any other comments or questions?
Can I ask a question if I can? The language about the payback, remember earlier I said there's a couple of documents that we're not a party to. That language is in one of the documents that we're not a party to. We did look at it, review it, and probably should have picked it up, but this was the document for the original one. This is an agreement between Alliance Mills and the authority. And I think Kevin and Illinois approved their execution of this agreement. So I was trying to figure out, and I've heard at least a couple of people say they want interest language added in. I don't know, we've got this on the agenda tonight.
Could we work on this before the permanent bond? I think the permanent bond issue is the critical point. If we could catch it, could we catch it at that point? Doug's shaking his head.
I mean, would that give us time to talk about it? Sure. Yes, it would be hard to do.
I mean, we're not going to need any language like that between now and the permanent bond anyways, so.
But you do need these amendments now, or do
We need the temporary bond amendments, the ones we're proposing for tonight.
Well, what we're proposing tonight's amendments, like 4 different documents.
Correct. Maybe I don't understand the question.
Yeah, we have jumped through just about all the hoops that we need to do to be able to do this. I'm not sure if they've met with the Department of Local Government in Frankfurt, but that is scheduled, and then we're done. So yeah, we're right where we'll need this. I don't know exactly when, but
I don't think the county's approved them yet, have they?
right away. Yeah, the county has approved.
They've approved these 4
The
agreements?
county's approved, the authority's approved, and so I don't know that your approval is a precondition to the DLG, but those are the 2 things left so that we can, in the next 30 days or so, pull the trigger.
Well, if there are no other amendments ever needed between now and when the permanent bonds are issued, I'd fall out of my chair. So, I mean, I think there's going to be other things to be tweaked. Why can't this want to be one of the tweakings before we issue the permanent $27 million in 18 months from now? Or?
Yeah, the 27, and I'm sure you all know, but we're really still in the temporary construction finance phase, and we're a couple of years from permanent financing.
I may be a little bit different. I'm kind of a mindset if we got to change and everybody wants to make it, I'd rather make that small change now. But I mean, I'll defer to you guys what you want to do. Because I'm not sure I've heard 3 that say they want the interest language added either. I'm just trying to figure out, since we're on the agenda tonight, I'm trying to figure out what it is that we're approving for sure.
I'm okay with waiting until I'm okay with waiting to do it before the permanent bonds are issued, unless it's just would be critical, and I'm not hearing that it's critical. So.
No, I mean, because the city's not, I know you want to look at worst case scenarios, and you're not going to be writing checks anytime soon for this thing. There's a full year's debt service sitting there. So.
But what you're saying, then go ahead and approve these tonight then, and then come back later on and make that change.
Because we really would need to kind of, obviously, we're talking about actually amending a document that I don't think I can commit for my client. We sure can't commit for Alliance, and we probably would need to put a pencil to that and figure out what we're talking about. But we understand the issue you've raised.
And I'm not sure that you could decide on a interest rate that would be suitable for everyone in this case.
We just need to think about that a little bit.
Point
13%
should be
sounds
good.
pretty good.
Point
Well,
oh one.
I was thinking it would be.
Good businessman.
I just,
Mr. Mills.
off the top of my head, I think it would be the same rate as whatever the permanent bond issue's at. Wouldn't that be logical?
Well, that's a good place to start.
Okay.
Interest in refund to the taxpayer? Is that what the rest is? Goes right back, everyone's.
We take it off everybody's property tax bills,
Yeah.
We'll try to take care of the taxpayer.
penny at a time.
Yes, ma'am.
Just so I understand, but if we don't make this amendment now, what happens when we go for a permanent bond issue and no one agrees to that interest payment?
You just gave it for free.
Yeah, as I said a minute ago, I'd rather have everything done right the first time than do it and hope later on we go back and correct and fix things, but that's y'all's call.
I just don't know how you work out all the details right now, and then you got to circulate it back around all the parties. But
Well, not between now and 7
that's
o'clock.
logistics.
I wish I'd had that question a year ago, but I didn't.
Or even 3 days ago, it might have helped, but it's hard to fix it tonight.
I don't know if interest rate's the right word. I think the proper term for us as a government entity would be our cost of money. The opportunity cost forsaken by providing it to this entity vis-a-vis giving it to other citizens. The cost of money. Could we absorb a cost for this?
What's the word?
Thank you.
So what are we going to do? Are we going to approve this pending working out the details on that for tonight? Because I know they want to continue on with the project. Another period of time would be difficult for them.
I don't know that we have a choice.
Well, I think if the commission could express its will, that would be helpful so that we know that you as a group want this entity to pay some cost of money. Whether it has to be tonight, but we don't want to be chasing our tail a year from now, 2 years from now, possibly different people. We need to know whether you want us to seek that as a matter of public will.
Well, I think as a matter of public policy, if somebody's using our money, I think that we need to get some type of interest out of it.
Or if we put money out, we should get that back.
Plus,
One of the reasons
If it
Kate's
costs us
here
money.
is to
Yes.
document your will with
Yeah.
notes, and it would be helpful, whether it's a year or 2 years, that when we talk to Mr. Brooks again, we will say the commission had a desire to recoup its cost of money.
And your suggestion, Jeff, was cost of the bonds?
That may be a starting point, whatever those get issued at. The average rate of those bonds over the 25 years. But that's up for discussion.
I'm sorry.
No, you go ahead.
I don't have no problem with that.
I would agree with that, and I believe that covers it. We are not giving money away at that point. We are recouping what we spent plus interest or the cost of our money.
Kevin, do we understand the?
Sorry, I'm sorry.
I know you're talking to your
No,
client
fine.
too.
All right, I missed part of that.
It appears that the commission would like to attempt to recover interest costs on if should the city provide any money to backstop the bonds, that the city would like to recoup some of that in interest payments. I think it'll be discussed about how much that interest would be, but the thought is that it would be the average of the bonds that were issued. I know you can't commit to your clients to understand when that's the will of the commission moving forward.
Okay, fair enough.
And-
Heard you.
and
that-
we'll be approving-
We're already back here talking about how would one try to figure out what a rate might be, and it requires a little thought. And then your suggestion was good.
You're open to the idea that the cost of money should be recouped. The commission wants the cost of money recouped, and it's just we're going to take that action someday down the road when we all understand that it has to be taken. Is that a fair assessment?
These are tax exempt bonds, going to be.
Yeah, it can
So that'd be a tax exempt rate, which would be lower than your usual taxable rate. So that's a pretty good. I think that would be fair. I mean, at least to start out, see what we can do.
Is this what you all want?
I think that's yes.
Okay.
And I think we should say our goal is we hope this never plays a role.
Right.
We
It's
hope
everybody's goal.
That's
Right.
right.
Absolutely. All right.
Any other comments or questions? All right, let's move on. I think the next item is the WKU Community Bikeway Project.
Jeff Lashley and Melissa, I think Jennifer Tugas is here, as well as Rachel Hetzler. A little time ago, we presented some ideas about finishing the bikeway through the community. Majority of you expressed some concern about the proposed bike route. A group has went back and come up with a variety of alternatives. Hopefully one of those alternatives is more acceptable. I believe that Melissa's going to sunshine those alternatives to you now.
Thank you. Again, this is an update for the Downtown Community Bikeway. It's a federally grant-funded project in the amount of $950,000. To overview, it's a local match between us and Western, split equally, with the goal to start at the end of the greenways at Creason and University, come through campus, over the hill, down Center Street, to ultimately connect to Parks and Recreation at the back there. And our little pointer is out of juice. I believe last time that we presented before the board, the desire was to come down Center Street, which we're not changing. We're going to continue all the way down Center. The portions that are wide enough are going to allow bike lanes to be striped. As you get in front of the Justice Center and here, it is not wide enough to be striped without removing parking, so we're just going to allow that share the road use, which is common in a lot of communities and in town. Now, once we get to the ballpark, this is where we had looked at several alternatives to. At first, we looked at going between the wrap and the ballpark, crossing 7th here, and then going down to Parks and Rec, which is right here. And then most recently, that was not desired from the crossing standpoint of 7th Street in that curve, understandably so. So we looked at next coming down College in front of SkyPack, which was undesirable as well. So since that time, we've met with the committee. Helen Sievers heads up the committee. She's the project manager for this project, so that we can finalize a concept and move forward with final design. We're at that point and want to get this on the ground as soon as possible to stay within the guidelines of the grant. What we've looked at since the last time we were here was 2 alternatives. Option 1 is the red line. Basically, you come from the ballpark along a wide sidewalk, 8 foot being the minimum, beside what this is the garage now, to the other side of College Street, and then widen the sidewalk all the way down the Circus Square side, all the way down to 4th Street, and then turn, and this is Coomer Little, you can't see it, and then provide a wide path on city property there to connect to Parks and Rec. There are some challenges to get that 8 feet minimum along the sidewalk through here. So we looked at the second option, which utilizes Heritage Trail, which from my understanding, and I know that's been a goal to provide Heritage Trail through the park all the way to the riverfront. So that option actually continues that wide sidewalk on 8th Street down to the existing Heritage Trail here, picks up an existing greenway trail behind the chamber through Circus Square to a point here at 6th Street. Our preference and our preferred alternate is this second option through Heritage Trail. We feel that while we have this grant available, we can build on something we want to ultimately complete as things develop on down toward the riverfront. It's my understanding that some development along the riverfront is actually preserving that area for Heritage Trail in their development plan. So ultimately, we have Lee Square that's preserving that pathway through that block between, I believe it is 2nd and 3rd, or 3rd and 4th, 2nd and 3rd. And so we want to continue that. So that would be our preferred alternative. And what that involves is some additional sidewalk, which would be funded by this project here, all the way to this block here, utilize what is already on the ground. The block here, what we call Jones Alley, is between 6th and 5th Street. We currently already have that budgeted in our overlay project. We had a drainage issue there, so we have money. We're waiting on Atmos to do some work with relocation of a line, so we will be improving this with overlay funds. And then between 5th and 4th, we would have some improvements with this grant, some markings, some signage to direct people the right way. And then basically through here, we'd have a path 8 to 10 feet wide on the parks property to get us back to our ending point at Parks and Rec. So again, we looked at these two alternatives with Greenways, got their input. I think a lot of those, while I was out, walked it, looked at it from a user standpoint, what makes the most sense, and then from your input at the last meeting, the desire to preserve Heritage Trail, use it, promote it, and as we grow through the downtown, that be our focus. And I know that we do have a capital improvement project to put on down the way and put some money into improving that area as well. So I guess we're here tonight just to kind of get are we good with this option? If we are, go forward with the consultant and let them start doing the hard design and get the construction documents in place.
Yeah, I have a question, if you don't
Yes.
mind, on the, between the 5th and 6th Street, what's our plans on the drainage for that?
You had to ask.
No.
We met with Atmos last week, actually. And
just for those who don't know, the alley is actually an invert.
It is inverted.
So that the water flows down the middle of the alley.
Horrible shape, easily fixed if the gas line wasn't right underneath there. They currently do not have money right now to move that. Last conversation we had, it's going to have to be lowered in essence. There's several complications in there, but they're going to have to lower it. They're trying to work in getting that moved up in priority, and that's funding, so that we can move forward with that, because we do have funds committed to improve that. We still want to try to get the water from 6th Street down to 5th Street, but in a manner of doing that and not having that inverted crown alley, we were going to impact the gas line. So they do have some improvements that they were going to have to make in that area, and they're trying to incorporate that all and hopefully get it up sooner rather than later, so that we can get in there and do we even offered, while we're reconstructing, if we can open up the ditch for you while we're there, because we're going to have to dig it out anyway. So we're trying to work with them to get the most feasible option, the quickest, and hopefully we'll hear back from them soon to know when that might happen.
Questions? Yes, sir.
What about the interactions with pedestrians and park users in Circus Square?
That could be a concern for a biker that is just trying to get from point A to point B. I would envision, personally, I'm not a bike user, and maybe Jennifer or Rachel could comment. I mean, they could always go around the outside. I walked that the other day. That's a nice path around the outside. A lot of bikers choose to just stay with the flow of traffic and stay on the street. For instance, when we come down here to 4th, we're going to share the road right here, but when you get to the Parks and Rec property, have an 8 to 10 foot wide path. I don't envision a bike user like that to jump up on the path and go down 4th Street. They would probably stay in the street. So I believe we want to bring people downtown, and if it means getting off your bike and walking it when it's heavily used, obviously concert in the park nights, you're not going to have a flow of bike users through there. But it's getting people to destinations along the trail and ultimately down to the riverfront.
In a number of communities that have extensive bike routes, they actually have signs posted that would have there, like you said, that you dismount your bike, and that's nothing unusual, I don't think, for bicyclists.
And I mean, we've talked, not with this concept, but some alternates, if we wanted to send people around. The one-way flow up College, we wouldn't want to send them out into the street there, but State Street possibly. Common users would learn the way. But this would be the primarily marked path.
Well, I know we have a lot of children that play in the park and around the fountain.
And that's why I think, there's a way. And another point, too, We have some, and the state is involved on this committee as well, and she, Denitra Henderson with the state, looked at a couple of crossings. We are going to have to cross their roadways, so that's a little bit extra design for some bump outs. We already have a lot of pedestrians crossing 7th with Concert in the Parks. I think with this project we can provide a safer, more visible crosswalk there. But where I was going with that is if they went around, they could cross that intersections where there's stop controls, stop signs, and maybe even make it safer there. But
Now, all of this is, I guess, figured on daytime riding. Is that correct?
We really haven't gotten into that element of the design or talked about that. There are some, depending on budget and what we come up with once we get a plan on a piece of paper, some amenities, lighting, bike racks, and some other, maybe benches if they want to take a break. Things that have come up that are perfectly usable in this grant. Now, that just depends on what the end cost shows us when we get to that point.
And I have in mind, I guess, 4th and 5th, where we have the storage facilities, great big, what used to be warehouse,
right there,
tobacco warehouses.
Yeah, that is not well lit now. It is not. We would be providing a lot of signage and directional wayfinding, but we have not gotten to the point where we would look at any kind of lighting at this time. Personally, I would use it during the day, and I would probably be walking. But
anyone else?
I'm good with their second option that she described, personally.
Yes, sir.
Melissa, would this new variation essentially take a person using the Greenway all the way from Western all the way to the bypass near around Mitch McConnell Park?
With this project and with the extra monies that we have dedicated with our CIP funds this year for Heritage Trail, we can get people from beyond Creason. I'm not sure how far it goes to South Campus at this time and beyond, all the way down to the riverfront. Okay. Yeah, South Campus to, I believe, Emmett, Creason.
Then you can get all the way. You could,
right.
You can make a complete loop now.
Yeah, you really can, and it's just another piece of the puzzle. And unfortunately, we have this grant and opportunity, and then with our monies that we budgeted this year, we can close that gap even more so. And as the downtown develops, we can't see the future, but we will preserve this corridor. So a block, if it were to get redeveloped, such as at the riverfront, we would really, and with the help of Planning Commission, push to have that trail highlighted and maybe lit, maybe beautified, and those kind of things as things come along.
I do have just one other comment. Sure. To piggyback on what Rick said, and I do like the proposal that you are, but I would also say that there should be some type of dismount for the riders going through Circus Square.
We'll definitely take a look at that.
Yeah. And I think that would make it much safer, and I think that'd be a must on that.
Okay. Jennifer, Rachel, do y'all have anything to add?
On that
This is Rachel Heltzler from Planning and Zoning.
Thank you. On that issue at Circus Square, I actually personally rode this route the other day just to kind of see how it would feel if this were the ultimate route that was chosen. And when you get to Circus Square, I understand the concern to dismount when you get there, but like Melissa said, most riders, if there is an event or something in the way, they're just going to go around a State Street because that's the least path of resistance at that point. Otherwise, when you enter the park, you have to go around the curve. You can't keep going straight through, so it does slow you down. You can't really speed through there, but I would see where if we posted signs to dismount that could be helpful too.
Dr. Jennifer Tugas. WKU Parking and Transportation.
Thank you. It's good to be here. I'd just like to make a general comment. Of course, I do serve on the Greenways Commission as well, and between about 3 different roles involved in bicycling in Bowling Green. Going back to what the gentleman said earlier about downtown redevelopment and making it kind of a cool place to be, having the livable, walkable communities is really part of that. So this Greenways Trail, this piece of it is going to contribute to Bowling Green and help with recruitment of businesses and other things to Bowling Green. So I really see this as a very positive project for Bowling Green moving forward.
Thank you. Anyone else? Looking at through Circus Square section then, correct? Yeah. All right, sir. Thank you all for coming. Now, the last item on our work session is a discussion of our clothing donation boxes. Mr. Febo.
Thank you, Mayor. I think Brent's going to be our presenter, Brent Childers, Neighborhood and Community Services. For the last month or so, we've been grappling with how best to deal with the various donation boxes or bins that have sprouted up around the community. We've done some due diligence and research. Gene and Brent have done the bulk of the work, as well as Steve Hunter and those from the Planning Commission. We're here to distill the various ideas and to get some direction from you all. Brent?
Thank you, Mr. DeFebo, Mayor and Commissioners. I've been able to condense this presentation down to 45 minutes, so I will try to keep my comments brief. Now that
You can
we're
talk
at
as long as you want to, but we won't be here 45 minutes.
I figured that going at the late hour, I better be brief. So as Mr. DeFebo said, we've talked about the donation boxes for some time. And in doing the research for these, this is not just a Bowling Green problem. And you have a copy of the presentation. I did want to update that. Gene started it last week while I was on vacation. I came back yesterday and started reformatting it, as I call it, made it pretty. So I've given you a more updated copy of it. But as I said before, this is not just a Bowling Green problem. This is an issue that you see across the country. It is not difficult to find news stories, videos, news articles of other cities that are trying to deal with this same issue. This is something that is just spreading. It was just a matter of time before it came to Bowling Green. Located on 65 between Louisville and Nashville, I'm surprised it actually took this long. It started out west, is where I've seen some of the older reports. So we'll talk a little bit about that. First, we need to define what we're talking about. And we see them around town, so you know what we're talking about. But to actually define them, Gene has come up with a perfect definition. Unattended container used for solicitation and collection of donated clothing or other salvageable household or personal property. One of the concerns whenever we talked about this previously was we didn't want to include the in-site drop boxes, the mailboxes, UPS, FedEx, things like that. So we're really trying to limit this to the household and clothing donation boxes. So that's why we've tried to limit that definition down to that. And also exempting the recycle bins, the recycle containers. You don't see these as much anymore here locally because we do have curbside pickup, but in communities that don't have that, you'll see a lot of community recycle places. I lived in the county for a number of years, and you had to take where I lived, you had to take your recycling to the volunteer fire department. That would be a donation thing. So we've exempted those. So what we're talking about here is really just the household and clothing boxes. I had my code enforcement inspectors do an inventory. This was conducted in about April. We came up with 52. Now that number could have grown since that time, but we're in that 50 to 60 range is what we believe that are out there. And that's a combination of 3 different types. There is a GAIA, G-A-I-A, those are the green ones. AMVETS are the blue ones. And then Special Olympics are the white ones. And I've heard, I think someone on Steve's staff told me about another white one, but I have not seen one of those in the city. They had one in the county. So just to let you know kind of where they're at. Most of them are located out in the parking lots. They're out away from the building. They're just kind of sitting out there, standalone units. Some of our concerns, first one is just appearance, the aesthetics of what these boxes look like. And that's a concern for a lot of the cities across the country and how they try to deal with these. Also, do they pose a safety risk? Is their location out in the middle of the parking lot? There's potential for vehicle collision, there's potential for storms. If they're not affixed to the ground, I looked up just a while ago, well, I say a while ago, before I came over here a couple hours ago, they're about 300 pounds empty, and that's the steel ones. Now, if you get into the wood ones, they're going to be a little bit lighter. Your typical vending machine is somewhere around 700 or 800 pounds. So you're talking about something that's really not that heavy. And a lot of the work that we do in the building inspection department is to prevent storm damage. Whenever we have the heavy rains, the heavy winds, the tornadoes, things like that, to provide safe structures. What we don't want to see is a 300-pound metal box go rolling down the bypass into traffic. So that's something else to consider. Also, just the visibility and maintenance. Now, these are not local pictures. Gene got these from Google, which is where we pull most of our pictures. But this is something that we want to make sure that we don't see, is where people somehow don't make it into the box, or their goods don't make it into the box, they just be left on the side. So these are some other things. And you can see where one was collided here on the picture to the left.
And not to interrupt, Graham, if you follow the news the last couple of days, you may not have. A safety issue that never crossed our mind, but apparently in Oklahoma City a couple of days ago, a lady got trapped in one. She, I guess, was making a donation and accidentally dropped her bracelet into it. And trying to retrieve her bracelet, she fell into the box and couldn't get out. The Oklahoma City Fire Department had to get her out of the box.
She was in there for about 2 hours.
Yeah.
And somebody actually made a donation while she was in the box.
and she talked to them.
So that was a large box. It would have been more on the size of the one to the right. So we hope that we don't have those types of incidents. But that is, Gene sent me that this morning. Talking about what others are doing, I think that Gene and I had sent you a memo sometime back, kind of detailing that, and it is all over the board. Some cities have said we don't want any of them. You just prohibit all of them. You can't have them. Some have started licensing and permits. This is what the city of Louisville did. You pay an upfront license, you pay an annual license. It's going to cost you. If you want them, it's going to cost you. They'll restrict the words that are on it, the contact information, the pickup times, the organization that's benefiting, if these are tax deductible, if they're not tax deductible, the maintenance responsibilities, when they're going to be picked up, that you have to have them picked up, that they have to be free from clutter, all those types of things. Lease forms, it can be as complex as you want it to be. The possibilities are endless on how cities are handling these things. Talking about Louisville, did want to point out, and I think it was in our memo previously, that they're in current litigation with Kentucky Special Olympics. And I'll let Gene talk about what that litigation entails, being our city attorney.
Well, that's one of the things that's kind of delayed us getting back to you. We've been trying to arrange a meeting with the attorney for Special Olympics and a couple of those people for probably, last 4 or 5 weeks. And we do have a meeting set for July 12th, I think, to try to meet with them here locally and go over some of their concerns. As soon as Louisville adopted their ordinance, Special Olympics, Kentucky Special Olympics sued him in federal court and got a temporary injunction stopping Louisville from enforcing their ordinance. Their ordinance was pretty strict. I mean, they had registration fees, I think annual fees. I think some of the things that bothered them was some of the language that Louisville required them to put on the side of the box because I think Louisville maybe took the assumption that some of these were not tax deductible contributions. If you'll go to Kentucky Special Olympics webpage here and just Google them here in Kentucky, probably one of the first things that pops up is their donation box because it's a decent for them, decent revenue source. So obviously they're kind of protective of it. I know Louisville has now readopted their ordinance. I think the litigation is still ongoing. I got the impression talking to the attorney for Special Olympics that they're close, I think, to resolving their issues with Louisville. But Louisville did rescind their original one and now have readopted a second one to try to appease some of the concerns of Special Olympics. And we're going to meet with them next week too to see, because I have sent them a copy of what we're proposing to do. I'm not sure I've got a real good feedback from them, but one of the things that I know they're still concerned about in Louisville's language says that the placement of the bin shall be restricted to an area somewhere with either 50, I've seen 2 ordinances, 50 to 75 feet from the front door. And I've been told by Special Olympics they have a concern about that language. So, and I guess the concern is if you make them put them next to a door, then some property owners may not do it. But we're going to get to our proposal here in just a minute, and we'll meet with Special Olympics and we'll tell them what it is, and we'll see where we go from there.
Something else that I did want to talk about, I've listed all the ways that other communities are restricting them, regulating them, prohibiting them. Recently I also found articles where some are encouraging them. They're looking at it as a green alternative, as a new initiative to reduce landfill waste, to increase recycling, and they're looking at it as an opportunity. So some cities have taken the other approach to this. So I don't want you to think that everybody's against it. I've finally found a few, and I think that was just a couple weeks ago we saw some articles on those that have come onto that side. Gene talked about kind of our proposal, our recommendation. We looked at existing zoning ordinance. We didn't feel that it had the language sufficient to move forward with enforcement. So we would look at amending Code of Ordinances. We haven't really picked the chapter yet. We're looking between building or maybe code enforcement, looking at those two chapters, but prohibiting them in residential areas. We don't want them in neighborhoods. We don't want them in streets that aren't designed for that type of traffic, those types of things. That is one of our concerns, so that they'd only be allowed in commercial areas, and they'd have to be attached to the principal building. So they would actually be physically attached to the structure. We're not establishing a threshold for what that attachment is. We're just saying that they have to be attached to the principal building. And by attaching it to the principal building, then they're not allowed to put it off in the parking lot next to the dumpster or something like that. Then it actually has to be part of it. So we're still allowing property owners, if they want to contribute to these organizations, and we found some whenever my code inspectors did the analysis, that were supportive. We found a gentleman who said, you know, I'm a veteran, I support veterans, and I want one of these boxes on my property. So we're still allowing those people to do that. We're just getting them off the parking lot, out of the way, out of sight, and kind of putting them up by the building. So then if somebody wants to have one, that's fine. Just attach it to your building and put it up by your building.
Not out of sight, out of the sight line.
Yes, out of the sight line. My apologies.
Does that mean in the case of the metal bins that they have to be, does attachment take in being chained to some part of the building?
We could further define attachment. Is the chain attached to the building? I mean, you know, you can get into the nuances of what attachment is.
Or a pole that's next to the building.
And that's why I felt like it was important to make it the principal building. So then it's not a pole out there. It's not something else out on the lot. It's actually attached to the building. So, and we can go over the possibilities of what is attached. And, you know, some of that might be in the ordinance, some of it might just be in our review and our enforcement of the ordinance.
Now, our record is going to reflect who the contact person is for that particular box.
Right now, there would be no permit, there would be no license, there would be no registration.
If what?
Of any of these boxes. So they would not be registering their box with the city. They would not be come to us for a building permit application or any of those types of items. We would just try our best to inform the businesses that we know of that have these, that, you know, we're giving you a grace period. After that point, we're going to require them to be attached to the building. And then we would start enforcement with the property owner.
But the box will have language on it denoting where the donation is going, because I think the companies want that.
Right.
So everybody will know they're donating to AMVET or Special Olympics or anybody else, so the boxes will be identified.
So the person, the commercial property, is going to be responsible, or the individual that owns the box or a corporate entity is going to be responsible to that owner for taking care of that particular box.
And we would also ask that they may maintain to prevent the accumulation. That's kind of going back to this picture over here, because we don't want that. And I think, you know, part of Chapter 27 already covers those types of things.
Are we not going to have language that further defines this attachment where it's not so ambiguous that somebody...
And we can go back and pull up some, I mean, I've got resources through building code and things like that.
I don't
that
want
define
somebody trying to do it with a rope.
Right.
Or
No, I understand. And we can further define that.
And the purpose of the attachment is twofold. One, that it doesn't tip over the person who's trying to get something out of it for safety reasons.
Yeah.
That the wind doesn't blow it out into traffic, and that it is out of the line of sight for people driving. So the permanent attachment, I think, would be better language or
I see
better
what you're saying.
adequately defined, you know, because a chain will allow the wind to blow it back
Right.
and forth until it breaks free, even if it's permanently secured, I think. But that takes care of that issue. Yes, sir?
I think by attaching it, you also advance a greater partnership between the owner of the property and the agency with the box. It doesn't become like their box, their problem. It's kind of a collaboration of mutual responsibility.
They gather that ownership, and by doing it in the fashion that you're describing, where we're not registering or licensing or that sort of thing, we're not selecting which organizations are appropriate to donate to or not appropriate, or local or not local. It's up to that property owner to decide whether or not he wants this box attached to his building or not. I think it's a great alternative, and I appreciate the work you've done on it. Other comments or questions? And you'll have the ordinance language passed around so we can, are you going to wait till after the Special Olympics meeting to make sure?
We would prefer, I think, to
Okay.
talk to them folks. We're scheduled to meet with them next week. So.
All right. Yes, sir.
I do have an announcement. Brent has been accepted into the prestigious University of Virginia Senior Executive Institute. Not that this is a reflection, but Mr. Waltrip was also, I think, a member of that, and Brent's been.
Set a high standard for you, Brent. That's what he's trying to say.
I did notice he was wearing a coat and tie tonight.
Yeah, see later he's going to lower our current standard.
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
That's something to be proud of. And
that is great.
Congratulations.
Yes, that is not. That is good.
Thank you.
Mr. Hunter, do you have anything to add to this discussion? Anyone else have anything for any other policy initiatives that we want to discuss in work session? Hearing none, we'll adjourn till our 7 o'clock regular meeting. Thank you for tuning in.